Hello, my name is Shayan Mandigarian, and I'm a sales engineer here at Jitterbit. Today, I'm going to walk you through a demo of the Jitterbit Harmony platform using an SAP to Salesforce quote to order process as our example. To begin, I'll introduce you to the SAP connector in Cloud Studio, which supports BAPIs, RFCs, and iDocs, tell you how to set that up. And then we'll move into the first use case of our example workflow here, which will be to use Jitterbit to query data out of SAP, things like customers, products, and push those into Salesforce in a batch process. Then we'll see the other direction where data will originate in Salesforce. We'll enter a new account into Salesforce as well as add an opportunity under that account that we add, which will of course contain line items referencing the products that originated in SAP. But this time we will be seeing an example of real-time integrations or event-triggered integrations where upon saving the account or marking the opportunity as closed won, Salesforce's outbound message feature will push that data to Jitterbit through our API manager, which will then route that information into SAP. Now, SAP will then send a response. It'll generate an ID, which we will then write back into Salesforce. So it's a bidirectional flow in real time. So to summarize what we will be seeing in today's demo, it's going to be focused on the SAP connector, showing you how you can configure BAPIs, RFCs, and iDocs, showing you the batch flow from SAP into Salesforce, as well as the real-time integration from Salesforce into SAP. And along the way, I'll be highlighting just how easy it is to use, as well as all of the options that you'll have at your disposal in terms of transforming and scripting. So with that said, let's get into it. All right, here I am in Cloud Studio. First things first, I will configure my SAP connection here. So here is the credentials page. It supports both ECC and S/4HANA for this particular connector. Plug in my credentials, hit test here at the bottom, make sure I get a successful connection. Once I do, I can start using the connector. Just so you know, we also have other connectors for additional SAP products like Concur, Business One, SuccessFactors, and so on. Right, so now we've configured the SAP connector. We can use our BAPIs, our IFCs, and iDocs. So if I wanted to use a BAPI, just do it like I did there. Click it from the connector library and drag it into the middle onto the canvas. Once you do that, there will be a wizard that you can click into to actually configure that particular activity. So quick overview on how to set up the SAP connector. It's a very similar process to set up other connectors like Salesforce. But now let's move on to our next part of the demo where I'll show you a batch process from SAP into Salesforce. Namely, we're going to see customer and product data. To that end, here we are in Salesforce. So just so you can see the before state, my accounts table is currently empty as well as my products table. So just give you a quick look into there. Now, I will go ahead and manually trigger both of my workflows. So I have one workflow responsible for the customer data and another one for the product data. You could chain them together if you'd like, but I just have two distinct flows. And by the way, I'm running these manually just for the sake of our demo. It's more likely that you would set them up to run on a schedule. Schedules can be as often as once a minute or as infrequently as once a year, anywhere in between there. So now that the flows are successfully done running, let's take a look. So my accounts table now contains those accounts from SAP as well as my products. All right, there we go. Our batch flow from SAP to Salesforce was successful. All right, let's talk about the transformation engine in Jitterbit, which in this case I use to map my SAP customers. So we're transforming the large schema we get out of SAP and transforming that into a more simplified JSON format that we will use going forward. So mapping fields is very simple. You just click and drag from left to right. There's also an auto map feature for any fields that have the same name in both systems. But once you map fields, it shows you visually, what's mapped to what, and you also have the option to add scripting. Now, in this case, one of my example scripts I've done here on the phone number is checking for null values on the phone number, and if we detect that there is no phone number or it's null, we will put in kind of a default value. Or, if not, we will just use whatever data came from the source. Now, this is an optional thing, right? Where if you need to transform your data with scripting, we provide you a function library with lots of different categories you can see here, like debugging functions, and date time functions, string manipulation, logical functions. They all come with documentation to show you how they work, and examples of them being used. And that is the basics of a transformation in Jitterbit. Now, transformations are really one of those kind of fundamental building blocks of Cloud Studio, where once you know how to set up activities like my BAPI call from SAP, my upsert call into Salesforce, and transforming the data between the two, that's really all you need to start building out much more complex workflows. Now that we've seen an example of a batch process, let's see a real-time flow where this time the event will be triggered out of Salesforce. Switch over to my account table here in Salesforce and add a new account directly just through the UI here. I'll enter in my basic details for my new account here. But upon clicking save, we will see this new account reflect in SAP along with a write back without me having to trigger anything manually in Jitterbit. Just the act of clicking save has triggered an outbound message from Salesforce, which Jitterbit picks up and takes that data payload wherever it needs to go. In this case, it took that data payload and converted it into a new customer in SAP, and we will see that reflect back in this custom field here if I just refresh the screen. So without me triggering anything in Jitterbit, it's automatically created that account in SAP and wrote it back to my custom field. And then I can use the search bar here in SAP to find that matching account. So just by entering in the information into the Salesforce UI, clicking save, it triggered the outbound message, which pushed that data to Jitterbit, which then created the customer. Now we can use that customer to place an order, which we'll represent with an opportunity here. So again, just have a little bit of information to fill in on the Salesforce UI. Now I clicked save there, but it didn't trigger any integrations just yet because we haven't hit a milestone of being set to close one. So when you have real-time triggers, you can set, certain validation checks you want to put in place. So here I am just choosing my products, giving them their quantities. And remember, these products we know exist in both systems from my previous batch flow. So now that I have the account and the products, I'll go ahead and set it to closed one. And this is that validation check that I put in place where now when I click save, the opportunity has been edited and it detects that closed one is the new stage. So again, the outbound message was triggered to take this opportunity, push into SAP, and we see the result of that there. This custom field I have called SAP sales order. We have the ID from SAP, which I can find by plugging that in, and it should match up in terms of the customer and the three products and their quantities and so on. So there we go, looks good. Okay, now that we've seen the real-time as well as the batch example and a bit of the transformation engine, let's dig a little bit deeper on scripting, logging, and how you go about building a flow like we just saw. So back in Cloud Studio, I'll click over to my workflow that we just saw happen. This was the flow that accepted my closed one opportunity and turned it into a sales order in SAP. So step one is accept the data payload from the Salesforce outbound message right here into my API request. That gives us the order header essentially of the opportunity. We then query Salesforce for additional data like the line items, the customer, and take all of that and create the SAP sales order via a BAPI call. And then from there, we have some additional steps where we are writing back into Salesforce. And all of this is just really to, facilitate the necessary flow of data to ensure that that sales order, that opportunity lives and exists in both systems at the same time. Now you'll notice my Salesforce and SAP activities along with those transformations, the diamonds, but there's also those orange circles, those are scripts. Now in my case, all these scripts are doing is really just adding information to the logs because by default we don't persist information in the logs besides simple metadata. But here I'm using the write to operation log function to put information into the log just for my own future reference. It could be debugging or just archival purposes. But if I open up the log on any particular step, I can see the resulting data. So here I can see when I went to Salesforce to query for any additional information on the opportunity, like line items, I can see them here. And with that, we've covered just about everything I wanted to touch on for today's demo. So just to recap, we saw the SAP connector, how to set that up and get access to your BAPIs and RFCs and iDocs, and what you can do with those. So for our examples here, we saw batch flows from SAP into Salesforce with our product and customer data. And then we saw the other direction in real time. We saw a new customer as well as a new opportunity get pushed from Salesforce into SAP in a more event-based fashion. And along the way, we also saw how to set up transformations as well as scripts. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope it was a informative session today. To learn more about anything that we covered on today's demo, please feel free to check out our documentation site, success.jitterbit.com.